There's something about the music of the 1960s that never really lets go. It follows you into the kitchen on a Saturday morning, into a road trip, into a quiet evening where you weren't expecting to feel anything. It was a decade that gave us more timeless songs per year than almost any other in recorded history. So today, we're going back, all the way back, to the greatest decade in pop music, with 18 songs from the 60s you must hear at least once. Number 18, Respect by Aretha Franklin, 1967. Most people know this song as Aretha Franklin's. Fewer know it was written and first recorded by Otis Redding in 1965, where it climbed to number 35 on the Billboard Hot 100. A solid hit, but nothing close to what it would become. On Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1967, Franklin walked into Atlantic Recording Studios in New York City and completely reimagined it. She sat down at the piano herself, brought in her sisters Carolyn and Irma as backing vocalists, and together they rebuilt the song from the ground up. The spelling of R-E-S-P-E-C-T, the "sock it to me" refrain, the call and response between Franklin and her sisters, none of that was in Redding's original. Franklin invented it right there in the studio in just 2 or 3 takes. When it was released on April 10th, 1967, it shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 2 weeks. At the Monterey Pop Festival that same summer, Redding performed the song and reportedly told the crowd it was a song that a girl took away from me. He said it with a grin. Franklin won 2 Grammy Awards for the track in 1968, Best Rhythm and Blues Recording and Best Rhythm and Blues Solo Vocal Performance. In 2002, the Library of Congress inducted it into the National Recording Registry. Rolling Stone placed it among the top 5 greatest songs of all time. Otis Redding died in a plane crash in December 1967, just months after Franklin's version became a phenomenon. He never got to see just how far she took it. Number 17, Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys, 1966. In February 1966, Brian Wilson sat down and started building what would become the most expensive pop single ever recorded at that point in history. Good Vibrations did not come together the way most songs do. Wilson approached it as what he called a series of feels, short musical fragments, each capturing a different mood, recorded across 17 sessions in 4 different studios over 7 months. By the time he was done, he had accumulated more than 90 hours of tape, which was then pieced together into a 3.5-minute single. The total cost was somewhere between $50,000 and $75,000. A figure that stunned the music industry at the time. The song used a theremin, or more accurately, a related instrument called a tannerin, played by session musician Paul Tanner, giving it that eerie, otherworldly sound in the chorus. Strings, woodwinds, cello, fuzz bass, organ. Wilson threw everything in, and somehow it cohered. Carl Wilson sang the lead vocals. Mike Love wrote the lyrics and sang the chorus. When they heard the finished track for the first time, Wilson recalled his bandmates saying, "How can you possibly do this, Brian?" Released on October 10th, 1966, Good Vibrations went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in December 1966 and topped charts in the UK and across Europe. In 1994, it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. It remains one of the most studied and admired examples of studio production in the history of recorded music. Number 16, California Dreamin' by the Mamas and the Papas, 1965.
All the leaves are brown.
John Phillips wrote this song in 1963 during a particularly brutal New York winter. He and his wife Michelle were living in the city, missing the warmth of California, and one morning he woke her up with a melody he'd been working on through the night. Together, they finished what would become one of the most iconic songs of the decade. It took 2 more years before it was recorded. By then, John and Michelle had joined with Denny Doherty and Cass Elliot to form the Mamas and the Papas. Through their connection with folk singer Barry McGuire, they were introduced to producer Lou Adler at Dunhill Records. As a thank you to McGuire, they sang backing vocals on his version of California Dreamin' first. But Adler heard something extraordinary in their blend and quickly had Denny Doherty re-record the lead vocal, keeping the same instrumental tracks. The song features a flute solo by session musician Bud Shank, improvised in the studio, and guitar work by P.F. Sloan on the introduction. If you listen very closely at the very start of the record, you can still hear a faint trace of McGuire's original vocal on the left channel. It was never fully erased. Released on December 8, 1965, the single gained little traction in Los Angeles initially. It was a radio station in Boston that broke it nationally. By March 1966, it had climbed to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, where it stayed for 17 weeks. It was certified platinum by the RIAA and inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2001. Today, it has over 1 billion streams on Spotify. Number 15, Hey Jude by the Beatles, 1968.
Hey Jude, don't make...
Paul McCartney wrote this song in the summer of 1968 while driving to visit John Lennon's son Julian, who was struggling with his parents' separation. McCartney wanted to offer some comfort and began improvising words during the drive. The song was recorded at Trident Studios in London in late July 1968, with a 36-piece orchestra added to the session. At over 7 minutes long, Hey Jude was considered an unlikely choice for a single. Most pop songs of the era ran around 2.5 to 3 minutes. The record label had concerns. The Beatles released it anyway. It became the longest song ever to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 at the time of its release. It topped the charts in the United States for 9 weeks and reached number 1 in 11 countries. It sold over 5 million copies within its first 2 months and became the best-selling single of 1968. To this day, it remains one of the best-selling singles in history. The song was the first release on Apple Records, the Beatles' own label. During the recording, McCartney accidentally sang a wrong line and left it in. When asked about it later, he said it felt more human that way. Number 14, I Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones, 1965. Keith Richards woke up at 2 a.m. in a Clearwater, Florida hotel room on May 6, 1965, with a riff in his head. He reached for his guitar, plugged in a cassette recorder, played the riff, and went back to sleep. When he listened to the tape the next morning, he heard the riff followed by 45 minutes of his own snoring. He played it for Mick Jagger, who wrote the lyrics in about 20 minutes, a stream of frustrations about advertising, television, and the mechanical repetitiveness of modern life. What Richards had imagined as a horn part was translated into a fuzz guitar riff using a Gibson Maestro fuzz tone pedal, giving the track its raw, aggressive tone. The Rolling Stones recorded it at RCA Studios in Hollywood in May 1965. When it was released in June 1965, it became the band's first number 1 hit in the United States, spending 4 weeks at the top. In the UK, the song was initially deemed too sexually suggestive for mainstream radio and was played primarily on pirate stations before reaching mainstream airplay. Rolling Stone magazine has ranked it as the second greatest song of all time. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1994 and remains one of the most recognizable riffs ever committed to tape. Number 13, Like a Rolling Stone, by Bob Dylan, 1965. In the spring of 1965, Bob Dylan sat down and wrote a sprawling piece of verse that ran to more than 20 pages. Out of that came Like a Rolling Stone. At 6 minutes long, far longer than anything that had been played on AM radio before, Dylan had already established himself as a voice of the folk movement, but this song marked a hard turn toward electric rock. It was recorded in New York City in June 1965, with organist Al Cooper playing the instrument almost by accident. He was not originally hired to play organ on the session and learned his part on the fly. The result, that rolling organ sound behind Dylan's voice, became one of the most distinctive elements of the track. Columbia Records initially resisted releasing it as a single because of its length, but radio DJs began receiving advance copies and playing it in full. Listener response was immediate. The label relented and released it in July 1965. It reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Rolling Stone magazine ranked it as the greatest song of all time. Dylan's move to electric rock at the Newport Folk Festival in July 1965, just weeks after the recording, became one of the most debated moments in music history. Some in the folk community booed, while others heard the beginning of something new. Number 12, A Whiter Shade of Pale, by Procol Harum, 1967.
We skip the light fandango.
Released in May 1967, this was one of the most unusual number 1 singles of the decade. Procol Harum built it on a foundation borrowed from Johann Sebastian Bach, specifically his Air on the G string, paired with lyrics by Keith Reid that were deliberately surreal and elliptical. Reid was not a musician, but a full-time lyricist, and his words gave the track a literary, dreamlike quality that was unlike anything else on the radio at the time. Gary Brooker wrote the melody and sang the lead. Matthew Fisher played the Hammond organ, and it is that organ line that most people recognize immediately. In 2009, after years of legal proceedings, Fisher was ruled by the UK's House of Lords to have co-authored the work and was awarded a share of the music copyright. The song reached number 1 in the United Kingdom and became one of the best-selling singles of 1967. It sold over 10 million copies worldwide. In 2004, it was named the most played song on British radio and television since 1952, according to a survey by the British music industry. Number 11, What a Wonderful World, by Louis Armstrong, 1967.
What a wonderful world.
Louis Armstrong recorded this in a New York studio in August 1967. He was 66 years old, his health was declining, and the world around him was anything but settled. The Vietnam War was escalating. Cities across the United States had seen riots that summer. Armstrong recorded a song about the beauty of the world anyway. The song was written specifically for Armstrong by Bob Thiele and George David Weiss. Armstrong's gravelly, weathered voice was the entire point. The producers wanted that sense of a man who had seen everything and still found reasons to marvel. In the United States, the song initially flopped. The head of ABC Records reportedly disliked Armstrong and gave the record little promotion. It was a different story in the United Kingdom, where it topped the charts and became a massive hit. American audiences didn't fully embrace it until 1988, when it was used in the film Good Morning Vietnam, after which it re-entered the Billboard charts and became the beloved standard it is today. Armstrong was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999. Number 10, My Girl by The Temptations, 1964. Smokey Robinson wrote this song specifically for David Ruffin, who had just joined The Temptations as lead singer. Robinson had already written My Guy for Mary Wells, and he wanted to create a counterpart from the male perspective. He and co-writer Ronald White built it around one of the warmest, most immediately recognizable guitar and bass introductions in soul music history. The track was recorded at Hitsville, USA, Motown's famous Detroit recording studio, in late 1964. It was the first Temptations single to feature David Ruffin on lead vocals. When it was released in January 1965, it went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming the group's first chart topper. It stayed there for 1 week. The song's opening guitar riff was played by Robert White, a Motown session guitarist. That 8-note figure is one of the most recognizable in pop music. The song spent decades in American culture, in commercials, films, and on radio, and in 1992 lent its title to a major Hollywood film. Number 9, The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel, 1965.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Paul Simon first recorded this song acoustically in 1964 for Simon and Garfunkel's debut album Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. The album was a commercial failure, and the duo broke up shortly after. Simon moved to England, and that, it seemed, was that. But in 1965, the song began attracting attention on radio stations in Boston and Florida. Tom Wilson, the song's producer, decided to overdub the original acoustic recording with electric guitar, bass, and drums, without telling Simon or Garfunkel. The remixed version was released as a single in September 1965, while Simon was still in England. It was the first he heard of it. The electrified version reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in January 1966. Simon and Garfunkel reunited, and their careers were relaunched. 2 years later, director Mike Nichols used the song throughout The Graduate, one of the most critically praised American films of the decade. Number 8, Be My Baby by the Ronettes, 1963. Phil Spector produced this record in the summer of 1963, and it became one of the clearest showcases of his wall of sound production technique. Spector layered drums, piano, guitars, strings, and castanets into a dense, cavernous mix that was unlike anything else on the radio. The record was designed to sound enormous, even through a small AM radio speaker. Ronnie Spector sang the lead, and her voice, warm, yearning, and full of personality, was the human center of what could have been an overwhelming production. The song was written by Spector, Jeff Barry, and Ellie Greenwich, all three of whom were major forces in the New York songwriting world of the early 1960s. Released in August 1963, Be My Baby went to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys has cited this record as one of the recordings that most influenced him. He reportedly wept the first time he heard it on the radio. Number 7, The Tracks of My Tears by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, 1965.
People say I'm the life of the party.
Smokey Robinson has described the genesis of this song as coming from a moment at the bathroom mirror one morning. He looked at his reflection and thought about what it would look like if a person had cried so much that the tears had worn visible tracks down their face. The song was co-written by Robinson with Miracles members Pete Moore and Marv Tarplin, who contributed the opening guitar lick that drives the entire song. That guitar figure, sparse, melodic, and immediately arresting, sets up everything that follows. Released in June 1965, The Tracks of My Tears reached number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100, but climbed to number 2 on the R&B chart. It performed far better on the soul charts than the pop charts, which was not unusual for Motown releases of the period. The song gained a second life in 1969 when it was re-released and charted higher than the original, and again in 1976 when a UK re-release pushed it to number 9 there. Rolling Stone included it among the 500 greatest songs of all time. Number 6, Blowin' in the Wind by Bob Dylan, 1963.
How many roads must a man walk down?
Dylan wrote this song in April 1963 in about 10 minutes, sitting in a cafe in Greenwich Village. He was 21 years old. The song asked a series of questions about war, freedom, and human dignity, and left them unanswered, letting the listener sit with the weight of each one. It was recorded for his album The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, released in May 1963. But it was Peter, Paul, and Mary's version, released as a single in June 1963, that brought the song to a mass audience, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and selling more than 300,000 copies in the first week. Dylan's own version was not released as a commercial single in the United States during the 1960s. The song became a central piece of the civil rights movement and was performed at numerous rallies and marches throughout the decade. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1994 and into the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry in 1999. When Dylan was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2016, this song was among those cited in the Nobel Committee's statement. Number 5, Stand By Me by Benny King, 1961.
When the night has come.
Benny King wrote this song shortly after leaving the Drifters in early 1960. He brought a rough version to producers Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, who helped shape it into the recording that was released in May 1961. The song drew on an old gospel tune, Lord, Stand By Me, and combined it with a melody King had been developing on his own. The bass line in the recording, played by session musician Lloyd Thaxton, is one of the most imitated in popular music history. The song peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the R&B chart on its first release. In 1986, the song was used as the title track of Rob Reiner's film, Stand By Me, prompting a re-release that sent it back to the top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, 25 years after its original chart run. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999 and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's list of 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. Number 4, Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival, 1969. John Fogerty wrote this song in about 20 minutes at his kitchen table in 1969. He had been thinking about the growing tension between those who served in Vietnam, largely from working class and poor backgrounds, and those who had the means or connections to avoid the draft entirely. The song was recorded at Wally Heider Studios in San Francisco and released in September 1969 as a double A-side single alongside Down on the Corner. Its raw, blunt delivery was a sharp contrast to the more elaborate productions of the era. Fogerty's voice, snarling and insistent, pushed the song forward without ornamentation. It reached number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100, but its cultural impact far exceeded its chart position. It became one of the defining protest songs of the Vietnam War era and has appeared in more than 80 films and television programs. Creedence Clearwater Revival was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993. Number 3, Runaway by Del Shannon, 1961.
And as I still walk on, I think of
Del Shannon recorded this song on January 21, 1961, at Bell Sound Studios in New York City. It was built around an instrumental break played by Shannon's bandmate Max Crook on an instrument Crook had invented himself, a clavioline-based keyboard he called the Musitron. That warbling, otherworldly tone cutting through the middle of the song had never been heard on a pop record before. After the session, producer Harry Balk sped up the recording slightly, altering the pitch and texture of Shannon's already striking voice. Shannon reportedly hated the effect when he first heard it. He changed his mind when the single reached 80,000 copies sold per day at its peak. Runaway was released in February 1961, reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April, and held that position for 4 weeks. It also topped the charts in the UK for 3 weeks. Shannon appeared on Dick Clark's American Bandstand on April 10, 1961, the same day it hit number 1, and it became the 5th best-selling single of the year on Billboard's year-end chart. Shannon was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1999. Tom Petty later referenced Runaway in his 1989 song, Running Down a Dream, naming Shannon directly, the kind of tribute that only gets paid to songs that genuinely change something. Number 2, Your Love Keeps Lifting Me, Higher and Higher, by Jackie Wilson, 1967.
That's why your love keep on.
This song nearly didn't exist in the form we know it. The instrumental track was written by Gary Jackson, Raynard Minor, and Carl Smith, and was originally offered to the Dells, who never recorded it. When Jackie Wilson came in to record it, he initially approached it as a slow ballad. It wasn't until he and the production team shifted the tempo upward and reframed the energy that the song became the high-flying, joyful record it is today. The recording, released in August 1967, reached number 1 on the R&B chart and number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. Wilson's vocal performance is one of the most physical in the soul catalog. He pushes the song upward with every phrase, matching the energy of the arrangement beat for beat. The track gained renewed attention decades later when it was used in the 1988 film Good Morning Vietnam, and again in the 1990 film Ghostbusters 2, introducing Wilson's voice to entirely new generations of listeners. Number 1, Waterloo Sunset by the Kinks, 1967.
People so busy, make me feel dizzy.
Ray Davies wrote this song after watching people cross Waterloo Bridge in London from his apartment window. He had been ill and mostly housebound, and the view from his window, people moving across a bridge above the Thames at evening, became the entire song. He described it later as the most personal thing he ever wrote. The Kinks recorded it in early 1967 and released it in May of that year. The production is deliberately intimate. Davies wanted it to sound as though it were being sung from a window, not from a stage. The harmonies were built up by Davies and his brother Dave, along with other band members, and the result has a hushed, almost fragile quality. Waterloo Sunset reached number 2 in the United Kingdom. Rolling Stone placed it among the 500 greatest songs of all time. It is frequently cited as one of the finest examples of British songwriting from the 1960s, and Ray Davies has said that it remains the song he is most proud of. These 18 songs don't represent all of the 1960s, nothing could, but every one of them carries something real, a moment in a hotel room, a morning at a piano, a conversation between siblings, a melody that came in a dream. The decade had an extraordinary habit of turning personal, private things into music that somehow belonged to everyone. That's what you're hearing when you go back to these recordings. And the remarkable thing is, they still hold up, not out of nostalgia, but because they were built to last. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps more people find this channel. And if you want more deep dives into the music that shaped generations, subscribe. We have a lot more coming.